Okay, today is October 15th, 2007, and we're here at the Circle Cinema in Tulsa. We're pleased to present Mr. D. Burns of Tulsa, who was in the Army as a tech sergeant in the 2nd Armored Division. Thank you, Mr. Burns, for joining us this evening, and we just asked if you would tell us your story.
Okay, I was drafted in the Army in 42, October 42. I had dropped out of school previous to that. My dad was trying to make a crop on a farm, so I dropped out of school. And about the next year, then Rommel was going over in North Africa, and Patton needed help over there. And the president sent me an invitation to join him. So I went in. I was drafted here in Tulsa, Bob Wills Band playing. And I've been a Bob Wills fan all my life, I guess. And went back home. I had 10 days to get my business wound up. Then I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Was there just a few days. It was issued a few clothes and took shots and some other things. One thing I'd like to mention and bring up, I was issued a little Bible there, just a little pocket size. And there was a verse in there, John 3:16, that I read, and that's when I publicly acknowledged the Lord. I did read that and signed it. And I still have it. I brought it back with me. Went from there to Camp Kimmel, Kentucky. About a day and night on a train. Only time I ever rode a Pullman. Got into Kentucky, take basic training there. I had 13 weeks basic. I was in an armored outfit, a tank company. I was actually, my MO was a tank driver. Of course, I was a gunner part of the time. We had there 13 weeks and shipped out of there to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. We was on our way overseas. We fired all the guns, drove the vehicles, did some maneuvers, some scary things. We dug holes out there one day, foxholes. They gave us a shovel. Said you got so long to get a hole dug to get in. I got down and got in that hole. They ran these tanks over. The lieutenant came by and put his foot on my back. He said, "Is that as deep as you can go?" I said, "Yes, I'm on the bottom." He said, "You better get in this other hole over here." I jumped over a hole next to it that was already dug. Here come these tanks down through there and ran right over top of us with the sirens are going, and I guess they were testing our nerves, because you better stay down. We got all that done. I had actually driven a tank about 4 or 5 miles on the road. Was my extent of driving, other than just sitting in the motor park shifting gears and driving them out in the muddy fields. We would drive them out there and get them muddy. We'd carry gasoline across the fields to fill them up. They'd hold about 100 gallons. Drive them back to the motor park and clean the mud out of the bogies, out of the wheels and tracks and everything, wash them down, put them back in the motor park. That was the biggest part of my training. We fired all the weapons. We shipped out of there to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. I got up there, and there was a lot of those fellows that lived within 3 or 4 miles of that base there. And I guess some of the meanest guys I ever saw in my life. I hadn't been out too much, but those guys were going home some way. They'd do anything. So they finally quarantined us to the barracks. We had to be marched to the mess hall like prisoners. Had guards on the doors all the time. And one night, an old boy came over, or day, he came over and wanted me to go to New York with him. And I told him, I said, he was a great big old boy, a big Swede. I was scared of him, really. He wanted me to go with him. I said, you know, I don't have any money. He throwed it down to 20 and he said, I got plenty more, let's go. I said, well, I don't have a cap. He gave me a brand new PX cap. I said, okay, we're going. We went down to New Brunswick, New Jersey, missed the train into New York. He said, let's go to Philadelphia. I said, suits me, I don't know either one of them. We went to Philadelphia and spent about not more than an hour in a USO club show, and he said, let's go, we're going to have to go to get back to camp time. Got to this train station, there's people standing there so thick, I didn't see how we'd get through them. He said, do you know how to get through a crowd like that? I said, man, I've never seen that many people in my whole life. He said, tell you what you do. He said, you get right behind me. He said, don't step on nobody, but whatever you do, don't get out from behind me. That dude walked right through that crowd and got on that train, and I was right behind him. We get back to Camp Kilmer. He said, the buses are already down there waiting for us. He said, can you jump that fence? It's about a board fence about 7 feet tall. Before I could say I could or couldn't, he went over the top of it. And I jumped over right after him. We slid about 30 feet down an embankment right in the door of that bus. We was the first one out there. He said, that's the only way we could ever get back to camp in time. Okay, we got that excursion over with, and we got on the train and taking shots there. And I don't know what else we did there in Kilmer. Got clothes, checked out. We went into New York City. It's so foggy you couldn't see across the street. We got on this Staten Island ferry. I'd never seen a boat, never seen the ocean in my life. We were standing up there so thick you couldn't hardly stand up with all of our baggage around us and everything. That thing started taking off. I said, you reckon we're going across on this kind of a trap? We steamed out there a little ways, and there sat that big old boat. You couldn't even see the top of it. And we got out, got our stuff unloaded out on the dock, and we had one drunk with us. And several of us was having to carry part of his baggage to get him on the boat. We got on the boat. It was out about 5 days, and they cut our water off. We had a canteen a day to drink and to brush our teeth with. That's all we could use for. We had to take showers in salt water. We got on out a few more days. They had British cooks. It was a British ship, the old Stirling Castle. We got out there. We wasn't getting much food. It was terrible. And one morning I went down to chow. Had to go down about 1 or 2 flights to go down to the mess hall. People getting sick all around me. And I got down there, and they put a boiled egg and a piece of crust of bread with marmalade on it, and a dried fish or some kind about that long. And I can't hardly stand the smell of fish, so I dumped it on the tray and ran before I got sick. Got up on the deck and I ate my bread, my egg. And you could go down to PX and get crackers and things like that, and candy bars out of the ship's store. And that's about all we lived on. Get over to Oran, North Africa is where we landed at. 13 days going over. This major wanted another fellow and myself to stay on the boat overnight to help unload the baggage next day. Okay, we get up the next morning, started unloading the baggage, and we had a rope ladder, it was only about that wide, to climb down. It was 90 feet to the water. Got down on this barge, that thing was bobbing up and down like a cork, and you had to be real careful to get off on it. He was telling us how to do it. And we got down, me and this other fella, and then he got down and almost fell in. We got off on a dock, loaded our baggage in trucks. There was an American ship sitting there that had a machine shop in it. And I went in there, and they had a drinking fountain. I got me a drink of water, and boy, that was the best water I ever drank. got on these trucks and went out this replacement depot, North Africa. I think it's 15 miles or something like that out of town, out of Oran. First meal we had, I got my food on my tray, sat down over there on a bank, and here come a windstorm, blew sand all in my food. I raked out part of it and went ahead and ate it. I knew I couldn't throw it out. We went on, and then we was in big tents, 12 men to the tent. We'd get up there, get out early in the morning, either go through the chow line. There was 9 lines going through this line. I don't know how many thousand guys was eating there at that one mess hall. We'd go out in the field and do all kind of athletic games, march out over the hills, come back in at night, go down, march down on the ocean there, stand retreat. And then some days you'd march around this field, 8 abreast, a little 3-piece band playing. Then we'd run 4 miles down the highway, come back. We did that several days. I was there approximately a month, I guess. Was on guard duty one night. Never had stood a guard mount. We went out there. This old captain's out there, and I know I didn't know how to present arms or anything. I hadn't been taught any of that stuff, being in an armored outfit. And he started came to the sergeant there, and the sergeant said, "Captain, you want a guard?" He said, "If you do, that's it." And we had to fall out then and go clean our pieces again, trying to get them a little better. We had gotten brand new weapons out of a box of Cosmoline. It had heavy grease is what it was, and nothing to cut it with, just rags to wipe it off. Got on guard duty then, and we had to carry a musette bag with our mess kit in on our back. And they said the Arabs were stabbing him in the back there. We had 3 rounds of 30 caliber ammo. We'd change, each time we'd change guard, we'd change the ammo. One night was changing guard when the bullet fell out of one of the cases, no powder. Oh, we don't know how safe we was there. Finally got shipped out of there to the 2nd Armored Division, joined this headquarters company. Got on guard duty there, and you'd have to walk guard at night with a mosquito net over your head and gloves on. And I seen my first air raid there one night, boy. All those tracers going up. Every 5th round in your belt of ammo was a tracer, as you could see. Then we did some training there. We were getting ready to invade Sicily. We'd go down, take the vehicles down, and load them on this LST. It's a big flat bottom ship, what an LST was, and the whole front of it would let down. We would tie a barge on the side of that thing and get it up full speed and cut it loose. And it'd ram up on the bank, and we'd drive off on it. That's why we landed there in Sicily. We went across Sicily in about 20 days, landed in Palermo, the capital of Sicily. And we was there about 3 months, I think. I stood guard duty nearly all the time I was there. We'd have to keep the wagon, the carts, and mules off the road, because we drove blackout all the time, and they had to keep them off. Well, it was hard to get off. We got on the boat in Palermo and sailed for England. We was 18 days on the boat. In 43, we had our Thanksgiving dinner on the boat. We got to Glasgow, Scotland, that's where we landed at. Got on a train there. Went down to Tidsworth Barracks in England. And then we got there, we drew all new tanks and started getting ready to go into France. We had to waterproof them. I ran a barber shop while I was there just to cut the men's hair. We loaded up. We did a lot of field trips, go out in the field at night. I drove a tank, and I never had driven a Jeep. I hadn't driven a car when I went into service even. I got to drive this little Jeep out in the mud out there and drive around up and down the ditches. And got back to the motor park. This lieutenant, he asked me if I'd take him back to the officers' quarters. I told him yes. I drove him down there. He was driving on the left-hand side of the road. Got nearly down to the quarters. He said, "How long you been driving?" I said, "This is the first time I ever drove." He said, "Let me out right here." And he said, "You think you can get this back to the motor park?" I said, "I got it down here, didn't I?" And I got it back, parked it. Then we were just about ready to start getting ready to move down to the port to make the invasion. We were there about a day, I think, a day and night, sitting there, and then we got on the boat. We stayed on a small boat. We had our tank, that big Sherman, a half-track, and a truck, and a Jeep. I think it was all of us on that ship, boat, or whatever. And then I landed in France, Omaha Beach. We was waterproof to go off in 9 feet of water. We drove off on the sandbar. But there was tanks sitting way out in the ocean there, already just plumb under. There's people dead. There's all kind of vehicles that they'd kicked off too quick. They just lost a lot of people. I found out that was the tide went in and out there quicker than anywhere on the beach.
But you actually landed on Normandy on D-Day itself.
D-Day itself in the hedgerow country. We had to fight in the hedgerows. We must have been in those hedgerows way over a month. We'd have to plow through those hedgerows. We finally made a welded pieces on the front of our tank to cut through those hedgerows. What they were just trees growing up in fence rows around these little farms, and then throw dirt up in it. Some of them would be 8, 9 feet high, and plow through them. That, I don't know, we was got out of the hedgerows and got the Germans on the run there. I don't know. Across the Seine River, I don't remember all the rivers, but every river I crossed was on a pontoon bridge. I never did drive one bridge. I drove across the Elbe River right at the last of the war. I got to drive across the bridge, and that was it. And we're not going to get near to the Battle of the Bulge, are we? We got on up. We went into Belgium, September the 2nd in 44. We went through there, through Holland on into Germany. I was on the Siegfried line. We got into Holland. The coal mines were shut down there. They let us go in their showers and take a shower. That's the first shower I had since we left England. We wasn't no time there. It got to raining, was muddy. I had to turn my tank in, and I was driving a little armored car, M8 car, and they had a split wrench dug out there by it, had a pup tent pitched over it. And one night they said, everybody move in these old buildings. It's drier. We moved in those old buildings. About the first, second night I'd moved up there. There was an 88 shell, let it right in the driver's seat of that little car. Tore it up, and I was issued a new tank then, and that was about time for the Battle of the Bulge to start. So I had to make a 100-mile march then back down to Belgium, went into Sales. It was raining, driving blackout. We got down there, spent the rest of the night, had a day and night about getting down there. Went into combat then the next day. I was driving for a colonel there. I drove for about 3 colonels in that 8 days. I was in the Battle of the Bulge.
Pretty cold.
It was cold. Snow and ice on the ground. I had common shoes on, just a pair of shoes with leggings on. My feet nearly froze. I'm having trouble yet with them. But went down there. I drove for that colonel that night. He was an old infantry colonel. We got down this new tank. It would shift, go up to 3rd gear, and it'd shift all the way back to 1st. Well, the old tank sergeant that was with me, he got to hollering at me that I didn't know how to drive. So I let him drive, and he got off the ditch and got stuck. We had to get pulled out, and then I tried to get him to go find the colonel. The old colonel just left us. He said, when you get this thing out, he said, find me. And the sergeant wouldn't get out and go do it. He said, I'm driving now. And so I had to go up through the snow, and there's an infantry outfit that just come from the States, 75th Infantry. And they were hollering at me, get down, crawl, you're going to give our positions away. And I said, I'm not crawling in snow on my belly. And because I've been in a lot worse combat than that, they're just getting a little small arms far. Went on up through there, found the colonel. This captain told me where he was at. He said he's laying out there on that old field, and he said you better crawl when you get out there a little further. So I did. I crawled up, shook that old captain on the colonel on the heel, and told him we had the tank out. We got back in the tank. He got to want to know, asked my radio operator how to fire the big weapon, which was just a 37. The radio operator didn't know how to fire it. The colonel didn't know how to fire it, so we didn't have a gun. Anybody could fire the gun at night, but the sergeant and myself, and we was down in the driving compartment. Didn't have to fire anything. Got up the next day, we was going across this field. The sun had kind of come out a little bit, and there's a command post over there in an old house. We was going over there, and the Germans were firing at us all the way across there, and they was knocking dirt up on the tank. We got over there, and the colonel got ready to go, got his orders or whatever. And he told me, he said, now when we start, he said, you go right around the foot of this hill. He said, we're not going across the top of it. He said, they'd almost got us coming across there. And I said, okay, but I said, Colonel, I don't think we'll go very far. That's an old marsh there. I said, he said, I don't care. He said, you give it all it's got, and I'll tell you to go. And I did. It buried to the top of the tracks. I didn't go 10 feet. He hollered for us to jump out and run back and get in that house in the basement. The Germans fired at that little old tank. I don't know how long. It seemed like 30 minutes. Never did hit it. And we finally knocked their gun out. There was another line company came by and asked me if that was the colonel's tank, and I told him it was. He said, get your tow cable out, and I'll tow you out. So he pulled me out. I had gotten a fruit cake from home. My mother sent it to me, and I never had cut it. So when we got the tank out, I got that cake out and cut it and passed it out. I said, we're not going to take a chance on losing it again. Made another trip on that day. We went in this woods and spent the night there, and I had to walk about a mile that night, let the sergeant drive again to get back in the woods, because he'd been driving buttoned up all day, and he told the colonel, said, well, I don't know the way. So we got back there and sat in that tank all night. My feet like they froze. I went to the medics the next morning, and he said, I'm going to put you in the hospital. And I told him I was driving for the colonel. I'd have to make some arrangements. So he told me to lay down and put my feet up. I got to stay about an hour, and we had to pull out. I drove the colonel, driving for another colonel that day, and I drove him to the command headquarters. and he was awarded a Silver Star for bravery. We got back up to the front, and he wanted to get out to where he could see. We were around San Maria or Bastogne, pretty close. I don't know this. I think it's San Maria closest. He said I couldn't get back in there because those big tanks had gone over these small trees about that big around and lay them down. Well, I could follow them, but I couldn't go back the other way. And he said, just wait here and I'll get out and walk on out there. So he got out there, walked on out on the field, and he got killed. That was Colonel Mansfield. The Major Long came back to the tank and told me what had happened, and I had to take him back to the headquarters in to get orders. And I drove for him, I guess, the rest of the war nearly. And about another day or two, we had never had our Christmas dinner. It was right at Christmas time. And the kitchen truck come up and cooked our Christmas dinner. We was all lined up to go through that chow line, and we had carried coal cinders on our tank, so if we got stuck on a slick hill, we could get up. And they had those cinders spread out on a walkway like that for us, so we didn't fall down. And we was all lined up there, a couple hundred guys. Here come this Sherman tank around the corner and started sliding sideways. He slid right up to them coal cinders before he hit her. We just almost lost our Christmas dinner there. From there on, we went on to another place. It had started thawing a little bit, and we had a little break there. We stayed in this big old building, and the crew and I, we had to turn the tracks over on my tank. We wore them out on one side, and you could turn them over. So we did that. We worked all day long on that thing, getting them turned over. And we went back in that night. I was supposed to have had a corporal rating for the gunner's job when I left England, and the commander wouldn't give it to me. And I walked in, I told that first sergeant, I said, either get my rating or get somebody to drive it. I won't move it out of its tracks. I got my rating instead of a court martial. And we went on there on, we pulled into an area one night then, and this major told me, he said, you've been driving long hours. And he said, I know you need sleep. He said, get down there in that basement and get a good night's sleep. He said, we got the guards out and everything. I went down there and rolled my bedroll out, went to sleep. I woke up the next morning, the sun was shining through a little window right in my face. I looked all around and everybody's gone. Boy, I thought sure they'd been captured. I rolled up my bedroll and crawled up the steps and got outside. I was setting my tank out there, but there wasn't nobody out there. I crawled around the corner of this building. There was my tank sergeant there. And normally we would have the gas trucks up at night, about midnight, to gas up. Nobody ever woke me up. And I asked him if we got gassed up. Oh, yeah, he said, I got them gassed up. Meantime, I had gotten a new tank sergeant. He wasn't that old one that I had trouble with. They wouldn't get out of the tank. Got gassed up. We went on in and then we went back into Germany. We had to cross the Rhine River at Morpington, I believe is the way you pronounce that. And it was March 45 that we crossed the Rhine River on a pontoon bridge. Well, I was sitting out on this thing, and the convoy stopped, and I was floating, just bobbing up and down. And I never did know why it stopped. I got back to the States, and I found out that Patton had to stop and pee in the river. And I got a picture of it at the house. I should have showed it to you. There's one down at Oklahoma City in the 45th Infantry Museum. But then we went on through that Ruhr Valley, Germany's most productive part of their country, I guess. Captured a lot of prisoners in there. And on up to the Elbe, that's where we had to stop and let the Russians go into Berlin first. Okay, we got that taken care of. Then I crossed a bridge on that Elbe River. That was on a bridge I crossed, a wooden bridge. We went on into Berlin, then we were supposed to stay in there for different duties. And I was on a color guard detail, and I pulled that for 11 days straight. Went out through that Brandenburg Gate out of Berlin, out onto the Autobahn Highway. And we'd stand out there, and then the dignitaries would drive by us. I seen Patton, my colonel, and Secretary of the War then, Stimson, I think, and Churchill. Several. I got to see them there, but I didn't get any good pictures of them. I couldn't get film at the right time, and I was getting on about time to think about coming home, but I didn't have enough points to come home on. I was going to have to go to Japan, and finally they dropped the atomic bomb, and that kept me from going to Japan. That's all that kept me from going. Then I started processing to get out of there. They had to give me a good rating if I'd stayed till the company came back, but I said, shoot, get me out of here. I've been over approximately 3 years, hadn't even been home, never had a furlough or nothing home from the time I went in till I got back. And I rode everything from I started out of Germany on a train, rode a train, and I rode a truck. They'd have the kitchen truck set up along the road to feed us, and we'd stop and sleep at night. And then we got on another train going into France, went on across France on a train, and they had the kitchen truck on the car there. They just stopped the whole train and feed us and then get back on and go on. Got down to the coast. Is the Lucky Strike. They had the camps named different. Cigarette, Lucky, Chesterfield, and Campbell, I don't know what. But I was Lucky Strike. Well, we was there about 2 weeks. Went down one day, line up for a little old cup of ice cream. Get right up to the counter and they run out. We got on a truck the next morning, or one morning early, to go down to the beach. And this semi sideboards on, we standing up in there about like when we started out, as thick as we could be with all of our baggage. Started off that mountain. Doggone truck driver jackknifed that old truck. We thought sure he was going to turn it over, scared us to death. Got on a boat, come back to the States. I got on KP to come back. We'd go down and eat early every evening to feed the other guys then. And that's the only time I ever got sick enough to lose my food. I went down, I got my food out, sat down to eat, and got sick, jumped up and run to the bathroom, and I lost it all, and went back and ate. Went back then and worked my shift, and I got one little scoop of ice cream is all I got to stay down. Came on back to the States, Baltimore, Maryland. We landed there, went out to camp. I didn't know that camp. Might have been. But anyhow, we was there a day and night. Well, they can't get you out here. We're going to have to ship you to Chaffee, Arkansas. Well, they shipped me down to Camp Chaffee, and we stayed there about a day and night. Long train ride, and they said, okay, we can't get you out here. We're going to send you to Camp Fannin, Texas. We got on some semi-buses out of Chaffee over to Camp Fannin, and those drivers all drunk before they left there. We got over on a hill in Arkansas there, and they pulled down, and it had a side door on this trailer, so a bunch of it jumped out. The boy stopped when what was the matter, and we told him he wasn't riding drunk, and one of our guys said, I'll just get up there and keep him straight. We get into the next little town, well, he was drunk, so they was both drunk. So there's another old boy said, I drove a semi all over Europe. He said, I'm going to get up there and drive it. And he did. He drove that one on in to Camp Fannin, going down just out of Dallas. The bus behind us was ramming the back of us. We made it.